The text came 3 months before Hannah's wedding. My sister. My younger sister by 2 years, who'd always been the golden child, who'd always done everything right. And I was Marcus, the family disappointment who'd dropped out of law school after 1 semester. Marcus, I need to talk to you about the wedding, the text began. Professional. Clinical. Like she was firing an employee she'd never actually met. I was sitting in my chambers at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, reviewing briefs for oral arguments scheduled the following week. The mahogany desk, the leather chair, the view of downtown San Francisco. None of it registered. I just stared at my phone. James's family is, well, they're important. His father is Judge Theodore Whitmore. Federal District Court. His mother sits on the boards of the Symphony and the Children's Hospital. This wedding is a significant social event. I could see where this was going. I'd seen it coming for years. I know this is difficult, but I think it's best if you don't attend. Mom and Dad agree. We can't risk you saying something inappropriate or, I don't know, showing up in one of those thrift store suits you wear. James's family is already concerned about our family's background. Our background. We grew up middle class in Sacramento. Dad was an accountant. Mom was a teacher. We weren't wealthy, but we weren't poor. We were comfortable. Normal. But Hannah had always wanted more. She'd gone to Stanford on scholarship, graduated summa cum laude, landed a position at a prestigious law firm in San Francisco. She'd clawed her way into rooms I'd never thought she'd reach. And she'd met James Whitmore III, associate at another firm, son of a federal judge, heir to old San Francisco money. I typed back, "Congratulations on your engagement. I understand. I hope you have a beautiful day." 3 minutes later, Mom called. "Marcus, honey, you know we love you." "I know, Mom. It's just, this is Hannah's day. And James's family. They're very traditional. Very particular. Hannah's worked so hard to fit in with them. We can't have anything jeopardize that." "I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really understand. Judge Whitmore is one of the most respected federal judges in California. His wife, Catherine, is from one of the oldest families in the state. Their circles are, well, they're not used to people who..." She trailed off. "Who dropped out of law school." I finished. "Marcus, you know that's not what I meant." But it was exactly what she meant. It had been 12 years since I'd left Stanford Law after 1 semester. 12 years of being the family embarrassment. The one who'd had a full ride to one of the best law schools in the country and threw it all away. They didn't know why I'd left. I'd never told them. "Hannah asked me to explain the situation," Mom continued. "She doesn't want drama at her wedding. And frankly, neither do your father and I. We've worked very hard to make a good impression on the Whitmore family. We can't have you there in some cheap suit talking about your freelance work or whatever it is you do." Freelance work. That's what I'd told them. Vague consulting. Document review. Research projects. They'd never asked for details. They'd never wanted to know. It was easier for them to believe I was scraping by, barely making ends meet in some tiny apartment in Oakland. "I won't come," I said quietly. "Tell Hannah I understand." "You're such a good brother," Mom said, relief flooding her voice. "This means so much to Hannah. And who knows? Maybe being around James's family will open some doors for your father and me. Judge Whitmore has connections everywhere." After she hung up, I sat in my chambers for a long time. Through the windows I could see the city spreading out below. The financial district, the bay, the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. My clerk, Jennifer, knocked softly on the door. "Judge Rivera? The Hawthorne brief is ready for your review." "Thank you, Jennifer. Just leave it on the desk." She hesitated. "Are you all right, sir?" I looked up at her. Jennifer was brilliant. Harvard Law, top of her class, clerking for me before she'd move on to clerk for a Supreme Court justice next year. She reminded me of myself at her age. Hungry. Driven. Idealistic. "I'm fine. Family matter." She nodded and left quietly. She knew better than to pry. I'd been appointed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals 3 years ago at 42, one of the youngest appellate judges in the country. Before that, I'd spent 10 years as a federal prosecutor, building cases against white-collar criminals, corrupt officials, organized crime figures. I'd won 98% of my cases. I'd been profiled in legal journals. The Attorney General had personally called to congratulate me on my appointment. And my family had no idea. When I dropped out of Stanford Law after one semester, I hadn't actually dropped out. I'd transferred to Harvard on a full scholarship. I'd graduated top of my class 3 years later, turned down offers from every major firm in New York and D.C., and joined the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco. I'd spent those years building a reputation, building a career, building a life, and I'd let my family believe I was a failure. But at first it was protection. That one semester at Stanford had taught me something crucial. My family couldn't handle my success. When I'd been accepted to Stanford Law with a full scholarship, Dad had immediately started planning how I'd help him with his taxes, how I'd review his business contracts, how I'd get him connected with important clients. Mom had started introducing me as my son the lawyer before I'd even started classes. Hannah, still an undergrad at the time, had become cold and competitive, suddenly worried that I'd overshadow her achievements. So when I transferred to Harvard, I simply didn't tell them. I let them believe I'd quit, that I was working odd jobs, that I was the family disappointment. And then it became something else. It became a test. Would they love me without the success? Would they value me as a person, not as a trophy or a resource? They'd failed that test spectacularly. Over the years, I'd watched them pour everything into Hannah. Every conversation was about her accomplishments, her cases, her partnership track, her engagement to James Whitmore III. They'd helped her with down payments, car payments, referred clients to her firm. And they treated me like I was invisible. Like I was an embarrassment they had to manage. Thanksgiving dinners where they'd tell me to keep quiet about my work. Christmas parties where they'd introduce Hannah and then quickly change the subject when someone asked about me. I'd been patient. I'd been quiet. I'd been watching. And now Hannah was marrying into the Whitmore family. Judge Theodore Whitmore. Federal District Court, Northern District of California. I'd sat next to him at judicial conferences. We'd served on panels together. He'd written me a personal recommendation letter when I'd been nominated for the Ninth Circuit. He'd called me the finest legal mind of my generation. He had no idea I was Hannah Rivera's brother. Why would he? She'd gone by Hannah Rivera Sterling professionally, using our mother's maiden name to distance herself from our family's middle-class origins. And I'd never mentioned the connection. 3 months passed. I watched from a distance as the wedding planning consumed my family. Mom called occasionally, always brief, always apologetic but firm about me not attending. Dad sent a few texts, mostly asking if I was doing okay financially, in a way that made it clear he assumed I wasn't. Hannah never called at all. The wedding was set for the Whitmore estate in Pacific Heights, one of those old San Francisco mansions that had been in the family since the gold rush. 300 guests. String quartet. 5-course dinner. Coverage in the society pages. I wasn't invited. I'd accepted that. What I hadn't accepted was the call from my colleague 2 weeks before the wedding. "Marcus, this is awkward," Judge Patricia Chin said. She was a fellow Ninth Circuit judge appointed the same year I was. "We'd become friends. But I need to give you a heads up." "About what?" "Theodore Whitmore's son is getting married. James Whitmore III. Big society wedding. Theodore's been talking about it at conferences. Apparently his future daughter-in-law is from a respectable middle-class family, his words, and he's pleased that his son is marrying someone with traditional values." My stomach tightened. "Patricia, what does this have to do with me?" "Theodore invited me to the wedding. Invited half the federal judiciary, actually. It's apparently the social event of the season. And Marcus." She paused. "The bride's name is Hannah Rivera Sterling. Is that your sister?" I closed my eyes. "Yes." "Does she know what you do?" "No." There was a long silence. "Marcus, this is going to come out. Every federal judge in Northern California will be at this wedding. You're one of the most respected jurists on the Ninth Circuit. People know you. Your picture was in the Chronicle last month when you wrote that opinion on environmental law. My family doesn't read the legal sections of newspapers. Your sister works at Morrison and Fisher. They're going to have partners there. Partners who've argued before you. Marcus, someone's going to recognize you." "I'm not going to the wedding, Patricia. I wasn't invited." Another pause. "You weren't invited to your own sister's wedding? It's complicated. Marcus, I've known you for 3 years. You're brilliant, fair, and one of the kindest people I've ever met. And your family doesn't know you're a federal appellate judge. They think I dropped out of law school and work freelance document review. I could almost hear her processing this. Patricia was brilliant. Stanford Law, clerk for Justice Ginsburg, 15 years as a civil rights attorney before her appointment. She'd seen a lot in her career. But this seemed to genuinely shock her. Why? She finally asked. Because I wanted to know if they'd love me without the title. Without the prestige. Without the connections. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out they don't. I'm sorry, Marcus. Don't be. I've known for years. This just confirms it. So you're really not going? I wasn't invited, Patricia. My mother explicitly told me not to come because I'd embarrass them in front of the Whitmore family. That's... She struggled for words. That's horrible. It is what it is. Theodore talks about you all the time, you know. Rivera's opinion on environmental standing was masterful. Rivera's oral argument skills are unmatched. Rivera's going to be on the Supreme Court someday. He has no idea his son is marrying your sister. And I'm not going to tell him. Marcus, you should come to the wedding. You were invited. I'm inviting you as my +1. You have every right to be there. I thought about it. The confrontation. The revelation. The look on Hannah's face, on my parents' faces when they realized who I was. What I was. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. I'll think about it, I told Patricia. I didn't have to think long. 2 days later, Mom called. Marcus, we need you to do something. What is it, Mom? Hannah needs someone to watch the house during the wedding. You know, make sure no one breaks in, water the plants, that sort of thing. Since you're not doing anything that day anyway. Since I wasn't doing anything. Since I had nothing better to do than be my successful sister's house sitter during her society wedding. We'll pay you, Dad added. He joined the call. $200. That should help with your rent. $200. I made $220,000 a year as a federal judge. I owned a 3-bedroom condo in Russian Hill worth $2.3 million. I had investments, savings, a pension that would pay me for life. And they wanted to pay me $200 to watch Hannah's house. Actually, I said slowly, I won't be available that day. I have a work commitment. Marcus, you can't blow this off, Mom said sharply. This is important. Hannah's counting on you. Hannah told me not to come to her wedding because I'd embarrass her. But now she's counting on me to watch her house. Don't be dramatic. You know what I mean. Your family. This is what family does. Then I'll see you at the wedding. There was a stunned silence. Marcus, we talked about this, Dad said. You're not invited. James's family. Judge Whitmore invited me, I said calmly. Or rather, Judge Chin invited me as her guest. I'll be there. You can't just show up. Hannah's voice cut in. She'd been listening the whole time. Marcus, this is my wedding. My day. You'll ruin everything. How would I ruin it, Hannah? By showing up in some cheap suit, by saying something stupid, by making James's family think we're trash. I supplied quietly. Is that the word you're looking for? I didn't say that. But you thought it. You all thought it. For 12 years you've thought it. Marcus, you dropped out of Stanford Law. Hannah said. You threw away a full scholarship. You work dead-end freelance jobs. You live in some tiny apartment. You drive a car that's 15 years old. What were we supposed to think? My car was indeed 15 years old. A 2011 Toyota Camry. Reliable. Practical. I'd bought it new during my first year as an AUSA and never saw the need to replace it. But in Hannah's world, the car you drove mattered more than the person driving it. I'm coming to the wedding, I repeated. Judge Chin invited me. If you have a problem with that, take it up with her. I hung up. My phone exploded with texts. That Hannah. Even Hannah's maid of honor, my cousin Jessica, who apparently felt the need to weigh in on family drama that wasn't hers. I ignored them all. The day of the wedding arrived. I put on my best suit, a custom-tailored Tom Ford I'd bought for judicial conferences. Navy blue. Impeccably fitted. I looked good. I looked exactly like what I was. A successful federal appellate judge at the top of his career. I picked up Patricia in my 15-year-old Camry. She lived in No Valley, not far from my place. You ready for this? She asked as she slid into the passenger seat. Not even a little bit. You could still back out. We could grab dinner somewhere else. I shook my head. No. I've let them control the narrative for 12 years. It's time they knew the truth. The Whitmore estate was everything I'd imagined. Massive. Historic. Gardens that probably required a full-time staff. Ballads taking cars. String quartet playing on the lawn. Patricia and I walked up together. I could see the other judges arriving. Judge Morrison from the District Court, Judge Yamaguchi from the Ninth Circuit, even Judge Bradford who'd been on the bench for 30 years. They all knew me. They all greeted me warmly. Rivera. Didn't know you'd be here, Judge Morrison said, shaking my hand. Judge Chin was kind enough to invite me. Well, Theodore will be thrilled. He's been praising that environmental standing opinion you wrote for months. We moved through the receiving line. I could see Hannah in the distance, resplendent in white, greeting guests with James at her side. I could see my parents, dressed in formal where that probably cost them more than they'd normally spend on clothes in a year, trying desperately to look like they belonged. They hadn't seen me yet. I stayed in the crowd, letting Patricia navigate us to our assigned table. Table 4. Right up front. Because we were sitting with the federal judges. Table 16 way in the back near the kitchen was where my parents were seated. With distant relatives and friends of friends. The filler guests. If they'd only known. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give Hannah that. She'd always had exquisite taste. The venue, the flowers, the music. Everything was perfect. James looked proud. Judge Whitmore looked proud. My parents looked nervous, sitting in their distant seats, trying not to draw attention to themselves. And then came the reception. We were seated at our table when I saw Mom's face across the room. She'd spotted me. I watched the confusion, then the shock, then the absolute horror cross her features as she realized I was not only there, but seated at one of the best tables in the house. She whispered urgently to Dad. He turned. His expression mirrored hers. Hannah hadn't seen me yet. She was too busy greeting the important guests at the front tables. The partners from her firm. The politicians. The society figures. The people who mattered. Dinner was served. 5 courses, each more elaborate than the last. The judges at my table were good company. We talked about recent cases, upcoming arguments, changes in federal procedure. Rivera, your dissent in the Martinez case was masterful, Judge Yamaguchi said. Scalia-level precision. Thank you, Judge. Though I wish it had been the majority opinion. Give it time. Your reasoning will win out. It always does. I saw Hannah's head turn. She'd heard my name. She was scanning the room trying to locate me. Our eyes met across the reception hall. I watched her face go through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, horror. She said something to James. He looked confused. She pointed at me, clearly agitated. James looked over, saw me sitting with the federal judges, and his confusion deepened. Then I saw him lean over and whisper something to his father. Judge Theodore Whitmore turned in his seat. He saw me. His face lit up with genuine pleasure. He stood. He walked across the reception hall toward our table. Hannah tried to stop him. I saw her grab his arm, saw her saying something urgent. He patted her hand absently and kept walking. Marcus Rivera, he said warmly as he approached. I didn't know you'd be here. This is wonderful. The entire reception had gone quiet. 300 people watching as one of the most powerful federal judges in California crossed the room to greet someone at table 4. I stood and shook his hand. Judge Whitmore. Thank you for having me. And congratulations. James is a lucky man. He is indeed. Hannah is remarkable. Sharp mind. Great instincts. He turned to the table. Have you all met Judge Rivera? Ninth Circuit. One of the finest legal minds I've encountered in 30 years on the bench. I could see my family's faces. Mom's mouth was open. Dad looked like he might be sick. Hannah had turned completely white. Actually, I said carefully, I should mention, Hannah is my sister. Theodore Whitmore stopped mid-sentence. He looked at me. Looked at Hannah. Looked back at me. Your sister? Hannah Rivera is your sister. Sir. Hannah Rivera Sterling, professionally. But yes. My younger sister. But. He was genuinely confused. She never mentioned. She talked about her family, but. He trailed off. Of course she'd never mention me. I was the embarrassment. The dropout. The failure she had to hide from her prestigious in-laws. It's complicated, I said quietly. Theodore's expression shifted. He was a smart man. A federal judge who'd spent 30 years reading between lines, spotting what wasn't said. He looked at Hannah, then at my parents in their distant table, then back at me. I see, he said slowly. And I could tell he did see. He saw exactly what had happened. Excuse me, I said. I should probably go speak with my family. I walked across the reception hall. Every eye was on me. 300 people watching the family drama unfold. I reached my parents' table. They were frozen, staring at me like I was a ghost. Mom. Dad. Marcus. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. What? How? You said you were a federal judge. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I was appointed 3 years ago. But you dropped out of law school. I transferred to Harvard. Graduated top of my class. Spent 10 years as a federal prosecutor. Then I was appointed to the appellate court. Dad's face was red. Angry? Embarrassed? I couldn't tell. And you never told us? I did tell you. That first semester at Stanford, I told you I was transferring. You weren't listening. You were too busy being disappointed in me for quitting. So I stopped trying to explain. That was 12 years ago. Yes. 12 years of being treated like I was worthless. 12 years of being the family embarrassment. 12 years of watching you pour everything into Hannah while treating me like I didn't exist. We thought you needed tough love. Mom said. We thought you'd thrown your life away. So you punished me for it. For 12 years. And you never once asked if there might be more to the story. You never once considered that maybe, just maybe, you didn't have all the facts. Hannah appeared at my shoulder. Her face was blotchy, her eyes wet. Marcus, please. Don't do this here. Don't ruin my wedding. I turned to look at her. My brilliant, ambitious, ruthless little sister. Ruin your wedding? Hannah, I was invited here by Judge Chen. I've been sitting with federal judges having perfectly pleasant conversations about case law and legal procedure. I'm not the one making a scene. You should have told me. You should have told us. Why? So you could use my connections? So you could brag about having a federal judge in the family? So you could leverage my position the same way you're leveraging James's family. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I wanted to know if you'd love me without the title, I said quietly. If you'd value me as a person, as your brother, without the prestige or the connections or the money. And you couldn't. You didn't. You've treated me like garbage for 12 years because you thought I was beneath you. We didn't, Mom started. You told me not to come to my sister's wedding because I'd embarrass you. You offered me $200 to watch Hannah's house like I was the hired help. You've spent 12 years making sure I knew exactly how little I mattered to you. If we'd known, Dad began. If you'd known I was successful, you would have treated me differently. I understand that. But don't you see? That's exactly the problem. Your love, your respect, your attention, it's all conditional. It's all based on what I can do for you, what status I can bring to the family, what doors I can open. Theodore Whitmore had followed me. He stood a few feet away watching. His face was grave. James, he called to his son. Come here, please. James hurried over, confused and worried. Son, did you know Hannah's brother was Judge Marcus Rivera? Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. James shook his head. She said her brother dropped out of law school. That he did freelance work. She seemed embarrassed to talk about him. Theodore nodded slowly. I see. He turned to Hannah. You were embarrassed by your brother? By one of the most respected federal appellate judges in the country? By a man I've personally called one of the finest legal minds of his generation. Hannah couldn't speak. She just stood there, tears running down her face. Judge Whitmore, I said quietly, this is between me and my family. I apologize for disrupting your son's wedding. Marcus, may I call you Marcus? Judge Rivera seems too formal for family occasions. I nodded. Marcus, you've disrupted nothing. You were invited here by Judge Chen. You've been a perfect guest. Your family, however. He looked at my parents, at Hannah. Your family has some explaining to do. He gestured to one of the staff. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Rivera and their daughter to the library. I think we need to have a conversation. Theodore, we don't need to, Hannah started. We do, he said firmly. James's wedding day or not, we absolutely do need to have this conversation. Because the woman my son is marrying just told me that her brother, a federal appellate judge, dropped out of law school, and was too much of an embarrassment to invite to her wedding. We moved to the library. Theodore. His wife Catherine. James. Hannah. My parents. Me. Patricia had followed at a discreet distance, positioned to intervene if needed. Theodore closed the doors. Someone explain this to me. Because right now, it looks like Hannah deliberately misrepresented her family situation to my son. And that's a problem. I didn't lie. Hannah protested. I thought Marcus had dropped out. I thought he was. You thought wrong, I said. Because you never asked. None of you ever asked what actually happened. You let us believe, Mom started. I told you I was transferring. You chose not to believe me. You chose to see what you wanted to see. The disappointing son who'd thrown his life away. It fit your narrative better. It made Hannah look better by comparison. So you went with it. Catherine Whitmore spoke for the first time. Her voice was cold. Are you telling me that you've been treating your son, a federal appellate judge, like a failure for over a decade? Mom couldn't meet her eyes. And you, Catherine turned to Hannah, you were so embarrassed by your brother that you told my son he'd dropped out of law school? That he wasn't suitable to attend your wedding? Mrs. Whitmore, Hannah's voice broke. I didn't know. I really didn't know. Did you ask? Catherine's question was sharp. Did you ever, in 12 years, ask your brother what he was actually doing? Silence. I didn't think so. Catherine looked at her husband. Theodore, I think we need to reassess some things. Theodore nodded. He looked tired. Disappointed. James, I think you and Hannah need to have a serious conversation about honesty and family values. James looked shell-shocked. Dad, Not now, son. But soon. These are not the values we raised you with. And they're not the values I expect in my daughter-in-law. He turned to me. Marcus, I owe you an apology. I've sat next to you at conferences. I've praised your work. I've considered you a friend and colleague. And I had no idea you were being treated this way by your own family. You didn't need to know, Judge Whitmore. This isn't your problem. It became my problem when my son married into this family. And it's my problem now because I have a great deal of respect for you, and I'm genuinely angry on your behalf. He looked at my parents. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Dad found his voice. We made a mistake. We see that now. But Marcus, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. You're upset because you just found out I could have opened doors for you. You're upset because you just realized how useful I could have been. You're not upset because you hurt me. You're upset because you missed out on 12 years of connections. The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. Marcus, Mom said desperately, we love you. We've always loved you. No, you haven't. You've loved the idea of me. You loved me when you thought I was going to be a successful lawyer you could brag about. And then when that didn't happen, or when you thought it didn't happen, you discarded me. You loved Hannah because she was everything you wanted in a child. Successful. Connected. Upwardly mobile. I was just the reminder of failure. That's not fair, Hannah started. Fair? You told me not to come to your wedding, Hannah. You told me I'd embarrass you. You offered to pay me $200 to watch your house because you thought I was poor and desperate. And now you're upset because it turns out I'm more successful than you are. She flinched. It's not a competition. It's always been a competition. You made it one. Every family dinner, every holiday, every conversation, you made sure everyone knew how well you were doing and how poorly I was doing. You made sure everyone knew you were the success and I was the failure. Theodore cleared his throat. I think this is a conversation you all need to have privately. But I want to be very clear. James, your wedding day aside, this situation is troubling. Hannah, if you want to be part of this family, you need to address how you've treated your brother. I didn't know. Hannah said again, tears streaming down her face. You chose not to know, Catherine said coldly. There's a difference. We left the library. The reception was continuing, but the mood had shifted. Everyone knew something had happened. The judges at my table looked at me with sympathy. The other guests were whispering. Hannah tried to salvage the evening, but it was impossible. The damage was done. James looked at her differently now. Theodore and Catherine kept their distance. And my parents sat at their back table stunned and silent. I found Patricia. I think it's time to go. You sure? We haven't had cake yet. I'm sure. As we walked out, Theodore caught up with us. Marcus, wait. I turned. I meant what I said in there. I have tremendous respect for you. As a jurist, as a colleague, and now, knowing what you've endured from your family as a person. You've handled this with remarkable grace. Thank you, Judge Whitmore. And Marcus? Your family's loss is the legal community's gain. We're lucky to have you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Patricia drove us home in silence. We stopped at a bar in North Beach, ordered drinks, and sat without talking for a long time. You okay? She finally asked. I don't know. Ask me in a week. That took courage, what you did. Or stupidity. I'm not sure which. Courage, she said firmly. Definitely courage. The next morning, I woke to 47 missed calls and 126 text messages. Dad, Hannah, even James. I ignored them all. A week later, a letter arrived. Formal. Legal letterhead. From Theodore Whitmore's personal attorney. My heart sank. Was he going to sue me? Accuse me of ruining his son's wedding? I opened it carefully. Dear Judge Rivera. After the events of last Saturday, Judge Theodore Whitmore would like to extend a personal invitation to you for dinner at his home. He understands if you would prefer to decline given the circumstances, but he wishes to make clear that he considers you a valued colleague and friend, and he would very much like to continue your professional and personal relationship independent of your family connections. Please contact his office at your convenience to arrange a suitable date. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I called Patricia. He wants to have dinner with me. Theodore Whitmore wants to have dinner with me. Of course he does. You're brilliant, you're accomplished, and you just proved you have more integrity in your little finger than your entire family combined. Should I go? Marcus, that man has been praising you for years. He recommended you for the Ninth Circuit. He's not inviting you because you're Hannah's brother. He's inviting you because you're Marcus Rivera. Take the meeting. I did. 3 weeks later, I had dinner at the Whitmore estate. Theodore, Catherine, James, no Hannah, no my parents. We talked about law, about upcoming cases, about the challenges facing the federal judiciary. It was professional, respectful, pleasant. At the end of the evening, as I was leaving, Theodore walked me to the door. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Hannah and James are in marriage counseling. I stopped. I'm sorry. I never meant. Don't apologize. They need it. What happened at the wedding? It revealed some issues that needed addressing. Hannah's relationship with the truth, with her family, with her own insecurities. James's tendency to take things at face value without asking questions. They're working through it. And you? How do you feel about all of this? Theodore smiled sadly. I feel like I failed my son. I taught him to value prestige and status. I taught him that success mattered more than character. And he chose a wife who embodied those values. So in a way, this is my fault too. Judge Whitmore. Theodore. Please. Call me Theodore. Theodore, you're not responsible for my family's behavior. No. But I am responsible for teaching my son the values that made that behavior acceptable to him. Hannah told him her brother was a dropout and James never questioned it. Never thought to ask why a family would treat a member that way. He just accepted it because it fit the narrative they wanted. Is Hannah angry with me? Furious. Humiliated. Embarrassed. All of the above. But she's also starting to understand what she did. What your whole family did. The counselor has been enlightening for both of them. What about my parents? They've called here 17 times. Catherine refuses to take their calls. I've spoken to your mother twice. She wants me to convince you to forgive and forget. She thinks this is all a misunderstanding that can be smoothed over. Of course she does. Marcus, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will tell you this. You don't owe them anything. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Not even acknowledgement. What they did to you is cruel. Systematic. Sustained over 12 years. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. But, he continued, if you do choose to reconcile, do it on your terms. Not theirs. Don't let them rewrite history. Don't let them pretend this was all just a mistake. Make them own what they did. 6 months passed. Hannah and James stayed married, but the relationship was strained. I heard through the grapevine that Hannah had been passed over for partner at her firm. Apparently her managing partner had been at the wedding and witnessed the entire debacle. Reputation mattered in Big Law and Hannah's had taken a hit. My parents tried everything to get me to talk to them. They showed up at my condo. Security turned them away. They sent letters, I returned them unopened. They tried to go through Theodore, he refused to facilitate. Finally, Dad sent a text that was different from all the others. Marcus, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to forget. I just need you to know that I understand now. I understand what we did to you. I understand why you stopped trying to tell us the truth. And I understand that we don't deserve another chance. But I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I read that text 20 times. Then I wrote back, I appreciate you saying that. But I need time. A lot of time. Maybe someday we can talk. But not today. His response was immediate. I understand. I'll be here whenever you're ready. I love you, son. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was acknowledgement. And maybe someday it would be enough. A year after the wedding, I was nominated for the Supreme Court. Youngest nominee in 60 years. Theodore Whitmore wrote my recommendation letter. So did Patricia Chin. So did every judge I'd ever worked with. The confirmation hearings were brutal, but I was confirmed by a substantial majority. My parents watched it on C-SPAN. Hannah called to congratulate me. Her voice was subdued, careful. Marcus, I know I don't deserve to say this, but I'm proud of you. Thank you. I've been in therapy, working through a lot of things. About myself. About our family. About what I did to you. That's good, Hannah. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you ever fight back? Why didn't you just tell us the truth? Force us to see. I thought about that for a long time. Because I wanted you to choose to see me. Not because I made you. Not because I proved something to you. I wanted you to look at me, Marcus, your brother, your son, and decide I was worth knowing. Worth respecting. Worth loving. Even if I had dropped out of law school. Even if I was working freelance document review. I wanted you to value me as a person, not as a credential. He was crying now. We failed that test, didn't we? Yes. You did. I'm sorry. I know. We hung up. I didn't know if we'd ever have a real relationship again. But at least now she understood what had been broken. What had been lost. I sat in my new Supreme Court office. Larger than my Ninth Circuit chambers with a better view, more history, more weight. I thought about that terrified 22-year-old who'd left Stanford Law after one semester because his family's expectations were suffocating him. That kid had made the right choice. He'd chosen truth over appearances. He'd chosen integrity over approval. He'd chosen himself. And now, 30 years later, sitting in the highest court in the land, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I'd rather be unloved for who I really am than loved for who they wanted me to be. That was the real victory. Not the nomination. Not the career. Not the vindication. The real victory was knowing finally that I was enough. Exactly as I was. And I always had been.